It wasn't long after our rescuing Watson that we were reunited with Akachi and Kobayashi.
Where's Colonel Morin?
I'm afraid we don't know. He escaped as we apprehended Baron Swaling. Holmes, all three of us really, cannot ignore the other man in the room.
I didn't have any say in the matter. They forced me to do it. Hang it all, I had no choice.
Baron Swaling erupted with excuses, nearly biting his tongue from the speed as which he delivered them. He was a frivolous, shivering mess. I seem to recall witnessing you rushing the contract when you first saw me, but could both my eyes and ears have deceived me?
You want to know about Colonel Morin and Spellbound, right? I'll tell you everything I know. Yeah, well, that was easy. Please, don't hand me over to Scotland Yard.
His voice was cut short by the streak of a bullet. What? The Baron smacked against the ground, a violent earthquake of movement from shock, clutching his shoulder and screaming his distresses with no end to his pleas.
Help me! I don't want to die!
Calm down. It's only your shoulder that was shot.
It's such a sad thing to be unable to aim.
Colonel Morin.
I understand how you feel now, your lordship. Oh, do I ever. It was my intention to shoot a medal into your heart as a gesture of respect, but there's no poison more bitter to swallow than the first sight of the lesser man you've become.
The colonel turned to Holmes, pistol still in hand.
So, Holmes Jr., I must know your thoughts. Who do you want to save? Who should be allowed to live? Do you not think it a privilege to stand audience to a helpless murder? Is it not beautiful?
Oh, it certainly is. So beautiful. It makes me sick.
Go! You damned!
Holmes stepped towards Colonel Morin, and a second gunshot being fired happened nearly within the same fraction of time. Perhaps the hastened assault was not part of the colonel's calculations, for the bullet fired was wholly reckless, missing its mark entirely and hitting a light fixture instead.
Enough!
He was not game to play idiot a second time. Holmes' second strike was met with Colonel Morin's arm in defense, and at the fortunate cost of the pistol which fell from his grip. He reached to pick it up again the moment he was free, but Holmes readied himself for just such an action.
Not a chance!
He sent the gun into the air with a kick. The force at which it was sent was harsh enough that no one could stand to run after it. Breath was held in anticipation of its landing. It's uncouth as it is to have bullets flying through the air without guns flying along with them. Yet fortune was still with Holmes. The weapon found a nimble landing in the hands of Marple, whose arrival could not have been more convenient under circumstances so tense. I was gonna say, have you been here the entire time? This is the first time you've spoken? Okay, no, she just happened to come at the opportune moment.
Scotland Yard, stay where you are!
Large numbers of police officers in familiar uniforms arrived with her. All others we spotted on the way have been taken into custody as well. Thank you so much, Marple.
My lady.
Pendleton! Pendleton approached me quickly upon sight.
All machinery in the factory has been halted per your orders.
Wonderful, Pendleton.
Pendleton, You were very brave, Holmes. Running fearlessly towards a man with a gun is not something ordinary men can do. Thank you.
Ugh!
Colonel Morin! His weapon lost and short on options, Colonel Morin fled into the factory. If he gets away now, we'll lose our chance to prove Holmes' innocence. You wait right there! All I thought to do was pursue him.
Miss Whiteley! Holmes! Leave everything here and go after her! Thank you.
Holmes wasted a little time following. You can't tell me Pendleton's not coming too. The only thing on my mind was finding the Colonel. I made quick, sharp turns and fitted myself through several narrow corridors, leaving no route unchecked before I finally found him. Colonel Morin! We met in a vast room containing a blast furnace. Furnace? A beast of a machine used in the process of smelting. It glistened with a gorgeous foreboding from a red blush. It encased flames so hot and so bright I could only peek at them before feeling as if my eyes would soon melt to nothing. It was this, and the sweltering air being blown upwards, that left me choking on my every breath.
Whiteley, what have you come after me for?
To expose the truth. The wind that boiled between us distorted his body, a contortion of man and devil that was coiling, changing, surging unnaturally, except for his eyes. They remained the same. I could have frozen in place by fear, but I could not allow fear to get the better of me now.
Truly. In my heart of hearts, I was hoping you would say to kill me.
I don't understand.
Well, I imagine you do hate me enough to desire my death. Your mother and father are reason enough.
What do you know about them?
I thought they were who you meant when you mentioned exposing the truth. Ah, but I see I was wrong. Then why pursue me? What drives you to put your life in danger?
Your actions harmed Holmes's good name, as well as the good name of his father. You stood to gain nothing from doing this, so why? Why did you do it?
Because we humans are vile creatures. For every bit of suffering inflicted upon us, we long to inflict the same on someone else.
For the first time since our encounter, the Colonel no longer looked at me, but somewhere far off that I could not see.
After I lost my wife, the battlefield was the only place I could call home. After I lost the battlefield, I had nowhere I could call home at all. That was until he graciously gave me solace. Until he gave me a new reason to live.
He? Come on, give me that, Moriarty.
And all it took was one man to come and steal it all from me. To plunge me into a misery I never wished to know again. Sherlock Holmes! I will never forget what I saw that day. The sight of him hurtling towards the valley's bottom. Cast down by him. He told me that this world needs opposing forces to remain in balance. People are no different in that regard. Humans must walk the tightrope between pain being dealt and pain being received. There you have it. I will never forget this pain. It reminds me that I can do what I must without pause, however cruel, however merciless.
In record speed, to which I could not react, he closed the gap between us. I felt a jerk as he gripped my collar. His strength made it impossible to move. Gah! The pressure, the heat, and all the elements of this moment made it difficult to breathe, and I felt myself losing consciousness. But I still mustered the strength to reach out my hand. Was I seeking help? Was I of help? I felt no accountment for my actions, and yet I did it still, with all that I had left in me. My eyes filled with tears. I don't know if it was crying, truly, but I could barely see the man now. How are you still talking if you're like this choked? Everyone has nights when they're terrified to be alone. Or they have scars that refuse to disappear. That's why the people who spend those nights with you only to help you tend to those wounds are to be treasured.
What could a sheltered noblewoman like you know about my life of pain and agony?
Perhaps you're right. I may not know anything, but I've experienced what it is to lose nearly everything once before, at least. What happened between you and my family is to remain in the past. I swear to you, I have no intention of staining your honor. Because you've shown me your scars. I looked at him as directly as I was able, my breathing and vision continuing to fail me. and now the furnace's heat tingled my skin, burned it, but the pain that should have been there was absent. The stare he maintained contorted again in a way I could only faintly comprehend. I thought I was the one who should be frightened, but to my vague sense he appeared more so.
You're a silly girl, Miss Whiteley. I only told you what you'll be taking to your grave.
Threatening words, and beneath that an uncertainty, the distinct rattle of doubt in his tone. But why? Is he related to her in some way? I have so many questions. I'm like, is he our uncle? Like, is he our mom's brother? What's his connection to our family? He seemed to imply that he was responsible for our parents' deaths, but oh my goodness. I don't know what to think. I could feel it as much, for I suddenly found breathing to be only slightly easier to manage. Then why have you relaxed your grip on me? Why did you set a trap that would lead Holmes to you? What did you want him to expose? Colonel Morin's wincing was accompanied by the shuddering of his shoulders. It was light at first, and it grew with an involuntary intensity. I knew full well that I was moments from death, which caused me to wonder. Was it the inevitability that sharpened my senses? Was it simply knowing that kept me from breaking down into sobs and protestations?
Do not mock me, girl!
I was frightened out of my wits, but there was no running from this. Not now. I closed my eyes. I grit my teeth. I waited to be sent to my death. And then nothing came.
Don't you touch her.
No pain. No death. Instead, the sound of a very familiar voice that filled me with a great warmth. It was a warmth I knew and welcomed with all my heart. It belonged to the man who held me as I cried, and cried endlessly. He would always be in my memory. Holmes. Holmes had come between us to block the Colonel's oncoming fist.
Miss Whiteley, need I remind you that you were the one who instructed I not leave you behind? Yet here you are, doing just that, as you always do, without any regard for your health. You are a truly brave, truly reckless young lady. I'm not certain I'll ever be able to understand you.
Holmes's hand, which had grasped onto Morin's fist, twisted the Colonel's arm upwards.
Ugh!
As Colonel Morin withdrew his hand, without thinking, the first thing I did was cling to Holmes's back. Aw. Aw, girl. Holmes, I'm so sorry.
Miss Whiteley, if you're going to go on with apologies, I'd prefer you do me a favor. Stay here. With me.
Let me see that. Yeah, you love to see a protective tsundere. What? It was so quiet, I wasn't certain if I'd heard right.
I want you to stay here and watch. Watch me not run away from anyone. Watch me not run away from you.
Holmes. I wanted to see his expression so much right then, but I couldn't see a thing behind the tears. Why must I keep crying? Oh, what did it matter if I cried again? You've turned me into a coward. You've turned me into a weeping child. Because of you, I'm not the person I used to be anymore.
I see.
But even so, Holmes, I still love you. I still truly, with all my heart, love you. So I want to stay here, with you. The confession manifested suddenly before I could stop it. I struggled to put my thoughts into words. Through the struggling and weeping, a weight lifted, for I wanted him to know everything I was feeling. By the way, big thank you, Colonel Morin, for holding off while she had this moment. I appreciate it. I wanted to tell him that I wanted to be with him.
Thank you, Miss Whiteley. It's funny you say that. I feel exactly the same way.
These confounded tears! They kept me from seeing the very person I wanted, no matter how much I rubbed my eyes. But I saw just enough to suspect the words were awkward for him to say. But it was all worth that adoring smile.
Ahem.
Now back to my pain, as I was saying. Oh, I love it.
I cannot stop thinking of that wretched day. The day when I thought I had lost my reason to live again. Your expression is the same as his. He had it just before he stole everything from me.
I've never once been happy to be told any part of me was like my father. With now being the first exception, I suppose. It pleases me to hear it.
It does.
I understand how he must have felt then.
Oh dang, he's going in for the old one too.
My father must have been willing to put everything on the line to stop the man responsible for more horrors in London than any other. Committing crimes and exposing them are two sides to the same coin, and there is but a fine line between them. He surely felt it was his duty. And so he became strong enough to follow through, because he had something he wanted to protect so dearly that he was willing to risk it all.
And you are here to tell me that you too have that strength.
Yes, I do. Still, I'm not as skilled a detective as my father is. That's why I can only put my life on the line for things I can see with my own eyes.
Putting your life on the line is pretty. And such a nostalgic phrase to hear. When I was a soldier, putting my life on the line to protect my homeland was my greatest desire. It was back when my wife was still alive. I wonder what would have been had I devoted myself to something else. No. I won't have such frivolities weigh on me. Where to end this, Holmes Jr.?
The hot wind still whirling around them, Colonel Morin slowly clenched his fists and assumed a low stance.
I am a man who once lived as a warrior. I have my pride as one. If you intend to stake your life on this battle, then I shall respond in kind.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
The two stood facing one another, ready for battle. I waited.
Ha!
Colonel Morin made his move against Holmes, signaling the start of their duel. I could see their silhouettes locked in combat through the heated haze.
Bah! Are you even looking?
Holmes dodged Colonel Morin's fist by a hair's breadth before going on the offensive.
I haven't been there for a while.
Now very close to the Colonel, he thrust his fist and elbow into him one after another. The impact caused Morin to stagger backwards. Before he could right himself, Holmes followed with another strike.
Oh! You!
Colonel Morin wasn't to remain on the defensive forever. He grabbed Holmes's arms and struck him fiercely with his knee. Holmes felt immense pain from the blow, though he refused to let it stop him. Rather than give in, he righted his posture to leave no opening unnoticed.
You're a strong man, I must admit. I'll do my best not to aim for your arm.
Holmes!
Ha!
No matter how many times he was punched, no matter how many times he was kicked, Holmes never stopped fighting. I could see new bruises and wounds appear from nothing, but I couldn't turn away from the sight. I'm right here, Holmes. I won't run away from you.
God! Damn you!
Ugh, I'm right here!
Their duel raged more fiercely than the roar of the furnace. Yet all duels must end. I was gonna say, don't you dare be a dupe to be continued. Forget it. You can forget that. You can put in your smoke and pipe it. Yes, you can put in your pipe and smoke it. I'm continuing. She is the forest. I am the rot. Sure. Ugh. Wow. That was intense. That's segue, though. We stood at Highgate Cemetery in North London. It resembled a garden more than a cemetery. Well-tended flower beds and shrubberies decorated its corners. Droplets from the previous day's rain still remained along the grass, and the mist hanging in the air gave the area something of an ethereal feel.
My lady, please be mindful of where you step.
I heeded Pendleton's warning as proper, taking extra care of my footing as we went farther into the cemetery. Are we visiting our parents' graves? We soon reached the grave we had come to visit, only to find there was someone already standing before it. Holmes. I wanted to run to him, but I was able to suppress the urge.
Miss Whiteley. Pendleton.
Are you well enough to walk now? By all appearances, he was more bandages than skin, and whether they dressed flesh wounds, hard cuts, deeper bruising, or some other horror, it did not matter. He looked more suited to a hospital bed than here.
Indeed. I can go about my life as normal. Are you here for this gravestone too?
Yes. I turned my eyes to observe the gravestone in front of Holmes. It was small. Plain. Oh, maybe it's Colonel Moran's wife. The name engraved upon its surface was the only thing that made it unique. Indeed, it was a name we heard through boiling winds. Holmes and Colonel Moran's battle was hard-fought and desperate for both men. Yet the fact remained. All duels must end. The first to fall to his knees was the Colonel.
Oh! You're coming with me.
Holmes stared down at the military man and ordered his conditions frankly, but he, too, was quite broken. An arm that needed to be held by the other for support, 2 feet which dragged and horrible aches. He could barely stand, but standing alone was enough to be made the victor. Holmes. I desperately wished I could be his support. But were I to do that, I would obstruct him from finishing his business with Colonel Moran as a detective. The best thing, I concluded quietly, would be to watch over him and bear witness to his actions.
You aren't going to kill me?
I would gain nothing from killing you. You're our ticket to Spellbound's inner workings. I will use you to lay your organization bare. To me, this victory over you is only the beginning. I do hope you're ready for worse.
I certainly respect your tenacity, if nothing else. You really are. Just like your father, Holmes Jr.
The comment was barely audible, and distinctly free of his festering anger and hatred. Scotland Yard! Don't move! As if on cue, police officers swarmed from the corridor behind me. We're here to apprehend everyone related to that organization. Do not try and resist.
Permit me to tell you one last thing, Holmes Jr. With or without me, Spellbound will thrive. All will be as Professor James Moriarty wishes it.
Finally! Get my boy in here!
Nothing can corrupt his plan. Nothing.
The colonel paid the officers no heed. He turned his back to them, not in rebellion, but in reverence to the light of the furnace. He walked to it, his arms lifted, extended as far out as he could to worship this light. Oh, dang. The only thing in his sights was the drop. Wait!
No, don't!
Farewell, proud detective.
Colonel Moran plummeted off the edge. There was nothing to be done as he, for one last time, vanished into the swirling pit of fire below. So we're at his grave. Wow. He really would rather just kill himself? I guess. Dang.
Professor James Moriarty.
Oh, we're at Moriarty's gravestone. Okay. Interesting. So we both came to be like, He's really dead, though. Right? He'd be dead. Right? Holmes read the name on the gravestone.
This plot was made when my father killed him. Presumably, under Moriarty's orders to have everyone believe he was truly dead.
Professor Moriarty, the criminal who gave Colonel Moran new life and Mr. Holmes's sworn enemy.
He is the true mastermind behind all that's happened, and he is most certainly alive.
To think that all the money Baron Swaling prepared for the contract was taken from under our noses, too.
According to his lordship's testimony, he was ordered to prepare gold coins, silver coins, paper money, and items converted into foreign currency.
Spellbound is an enemy to be reckoned with to take so much without even Scotland Yard noticing. There was one standout benefit to all of this. We had proven Spellbound still existed to the Yard. They were previously reluctant to believe Colonel Moran orchestrated the incidents, but after our final encounter with him, the truth rang all too clear. It gave us the ammunition we needed to prove Holmes and his father innocent, which would have been a cause for celebration in any other circumstance. Yet I was in no mood for cheer. Colonel Moran would have been able to connect us to Professor Moriarty.
Scotland Yard is doing all they can to investigate the Spellbound without his information, of course. But it would be best not to expect favorable results.
I agree. I wish it were, but this case is still not truly over. I recalled what the Colonel said to me.
Whitney, what have you come after me for? Well, I imagine you do hate me enough to desire my death. Your mother and father are reason enough.
I thought he was merely taunting me, but now I'm not so sure. He must have had some connection to mother and father. No, not some. He was a direct link to nearly ending the Whiteley name. Now he's gone, and I've no way of finding out for certain what that link was.
Oh! There they are! You were right.
I noticed Watson walking between the trees in our direction.
Have you finished your business, Watson? Yes. Bringing him to you was simple enough work.
Watson turned as if to introduce his traveling companion, but he was a man who needed no introduction. It's good to see you, Mr. Holmes.
He's finally been released from the Yard's custody, and you won't even go meet him.
Well, I did suspect I'd find you here. It's a gravestone worth the sight by our standards.
Sherlock Holmes looked down at Professor Moriarty's grave.
It was all for show. All these years, and no one was buried underneath it.
It shames me to admit it, but yes, I believed him to be dead. I've never mentioned this to you, but Colonel Moran was present when the Professor and I fought. When he thought he lost the man for good, he charged me before I could say another word. I shan't forget his expression when he did so. It was one of immeasurable anger and sorrow. To this day, I've yet to see another man become so lifeless in the eyes upon his arrest. Oh, to witness the life return to him when he learned the Professor was alive.
Before the Colonel died, he said something to me. I certainly respect your tenacity, if nothing else, and that I was like you.
In a way I could not describe, I believed Colonel Moran was paying his respects to his longtime adversary in his final moments. The act was merely paid through his son, who grew more similar to him by the day.
Now I've seen it, I don't think I could forget his expression either.
Well, quite unexpectedly, but pleasingly, I found myself heavily in your debt.
The statement was made truer with features of boundless pride for his son.
You were trapped, but you never gave up. No, you thought it better to wrestle the case using your own strength, as well as that of your nearest and dearest. You have made some very fine, dependable friends.
Father.
You did yourself proud, Junior.
Simple as they were to say, he struggled to voice them. I've never seen him like this before. He mumbled and mulled over how to articulate his pride the same as a child. and it was the imperfection that made what he said carry a sincerity that would have otherwise been lost. He then placed a hand on Holmes's shoulder, giving it an equally sincere squeeze. Yay, father and son!
As a father, I could not be more proud of you. You have become a fine, dependable young man.
Holmes did not respond. The silence itself spoke volumes. You've changed a little as well, Holmes. When I first met him, Holmes was not the kind of man who would listen to his father. It was wonderful to see how he had changed into someone who could accept the love of those around him.
Father, this case has helped me to understand something. You're an utterly hopeless parent who uses his son to settle his unpaid debts for him.
I cannot deny it.
Your personal life is as slovenly as your parenting. In numerous ways, I would count you the peak opposite of a role model.
I suppose that is true as well.
You love to play the violin whenever the urge strikes you, be it morning or the blasted middle of the night, and it brings no short amount of noise and irritation.
Ah, but you're no better than me in this regard.
What a terrible, right pitiful example of a father you are.
Nothing was said in turn.
Still, I feel as though facing off against the same adversary you once did has allowed me to learn more about you. Just as the professor gave him new life, your tenacity inspires the masses to deliver only their best, and it awakens them to the truth.
Holmes faced his father with so stern a focus he could not even blink. It would look to be a tense confrontation from an outsider's perspective, but from the insider's, the glare only punctuated how strongly he wished to express his thoughts. That smile.
As a detective, I look up to and respect you. Even if you have a long road ahead of you to earn the same as my father.
I'll have you know that I'm ready to take the journey.
How optimistic of you. At the very least, I'll be expecting you to keep your own office in order, then.
Holmes averted his gaze, at this point feeling the stress of the new bond he had sutured, content not to stimulate the embarrassment rising within him.
No. Despite progress being made, Spellbound remains at large.
Indeed. So long as Professor Moriarty draws breath, I don't believe we can ever call this case solved.
It's your fault I'm now involved in all this mess. Don't even think of goading me to leave it be by saying I'm too young.
I have a feeling you'll be giving me a bit more cheek from now on. Whether I should feel nervous or reassured for that remains to be seen, but I do know I've managed to raise quite a fearsome boy.
I shall take that as a compliment.
Like fearsome father, like fearsome son. They both had the same confident smile, down to the way their lips were crooked at one corner. I love it.
You'll have to take care not to get in the way of my work.
I believe that's my line, Father. Standing from over here, it's as if I'm seeing double.
That's funny. I was going to say the very same thing. Though they refused to give in to their egos, they were finally at a place where they could admit one another's strengths without shame. The darling sight was so infectious that even I chanced to smile.